What's up guys, it's Jen Brown. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial for this sweater. I'll pop up a photo here if you happen to see my video about crocheting an entire new wardrobe this summer. I have dubbed this the sandwich sweater because of the way I've done this stitching on the outside instead of the inside to join all these panels, and I said I like how it makes a little sandwich of the colors. So this one is called the sandwich sweater. You could also just call it the, I don't know, inside out sweater, the striped sweater, whatever you feel like. So a couple people said they were interested in learning how to make this sweater. This is a really great one because this is actually going to be super easy. We're just making a bunch of these rectangles. I'm going to show you how to make it, but I'm also going to talk you through how to make it, like make your own pattern so that it fits you. I really like working horizontally like this and having my stitches go vertically so that it's easier to kind of fit it as I go. I find that a lot of times when I'm making sweaters and tops and things, if I get going and I'm working like horizontally, sometimes it's either like too wide or too tight, which is even worse for me. So working this way, you can make it as wide or as narrow as you like, and if you mess it up, it's really easy to just rip out or add. So I'm going to be using different colors than this. I'm actually using a bunch of scrap yarn. And since we're making all of these rectangular panels, you can totally follow this stripe pattern if you want. When I made this the first time, I just sort of made a bunch of panels and started deciding where I wanted to put them, so you can totally make it up. The only thing that's a little bit, I don't even know if you would call it challenging, but a little bit different is when we get to the sleeve cuffs, and I'll of course walk you through that. So to start one of these panels, this is actually great because I can illustrate. To start one of these panels, you just are going to decide how thick you want it to be, and that's what you're going to chain. I don't have any plans for this second sweater as far as widths of stripes, but if you wanted them all to be the same width, you can do that. What's great is since we're doing this kind of like turtleneck collar, you can just make the front and back panel the same, and it makes it totally reversible. Like it's the same on both sides, so if I want to make one side be the front one day or the back or vice versa, you can change it up. You can obviously do whatever pattern you like for this. For this exact one, I will do that so that if you want to copy this pattern, you'll know how, but you can obviously make this however you like. We're going to start by just doing a row of double crochets. Okay, so once we've finished our row, we're going to chain one, sorry. And if you have never done back loop stitching before, that's what gets this ribbed effect. So we've chained our one, turn, wait for camera to focus. Now we're going to be stitching, normally you would stitch in this loop. We're going to be stitching single crochets in these back loops. Okay, so now that we've finished our row, we're going to chain 2, and then we're just going to repeat those 2 rows all the way until your or your stripe is as wide as you want it to be. So I think for this one, I'm gonna have it be like slightly more fitted, so I made this one just a little bit shorter. But once you're done with one stripe, you can tie it off and then move on. And all I did to figure out how long I wanted it to be is I just kind of like made a few panels and then started kind of holding them up to myself to decide how long I wanted them. Obviously there's this little trim at the end, which you don't even have to include if you don't want to, but if you want this to be longer or if you want it to be cropped, just start kind of making a few of your stripes and then holding it up to yourself to see how you like the length. So now that I've done this one stripe, I'm gonna take all my other colors I'm using and just make a few more until I have enough to do one panel, and then I'll show you how to put them together. Okay, so once you've got your different pieces for the front and back of your sweater, as well as the arms, we can start to put them together. Now, this is what it looks like when you're finished. Now you might kind of notice this looks a little wonky. What's great about this is I ended up using some of this yarn, which is a little bit of a heavier weight yarn. Obviously you want to try to get your gauge to match as best as you possibly can, but if some of that is a little bit off, because of this ribbing stitch, it's really easy to just line it up, and it might look a little funky at first, but once we stitch the sweater together, you won't even notice. When you're doing the arms, it's the same process. You just want to figure out how wide around your arm you want the sleeve to be and create a bunch of different pieces that are going to go together to make the length. And I will show you how to do the cuff, but this is just the same as the stripes you did for the front and back, just like measuring it. I guess I can zoom out a little bit. Just kind of like holding it up to your arm and deciding how long you want it to be. Okay, so joining these is really easy. I actually decided that first sweater, the pastel colored one, I did this way, where the stitching is a little bit more prominent, but I actually also realized I liked this. So I decided to make what would normally be the back side or the wrong side. I decided to make that the front this time. So you're gonna put them together. Make sure the same side is facing each other. Now since we're going down this side, I know sometimes that can be a little tricky, so what I do to keep track is I find these ridges where the single crochet is more prominent, and I just sort of like match them up and hold them in place. You could also use like safety pins, or like if you have crochet placeholders, you could like pin this along the way if you didn't want to have to hold it. But for me, this works fine. I do pretty well, just kind of like going a couple ribs of it at a time. And I'm just sticking my hook through the loop of each one and pulling the yarn all the way through, making a slip stitch. And I'm just going to do that all the way across. Okay, so once you've got your front and back panels ready to go and you start working on the sleeves, I'm going to show you guys how to do this cuff. So the rest of the sleeve we've done just the same as the front and back panels with the double crochet, back loop, single crochet, and then repeating that all the way down. So I have done, this part is 10 stitches, and then this is going to be 5 more. And obviously, like, if you want the whole sleeve to be one color, you'll keep going. If you want this stripe to be a lot longer, like I've done on this sweater, you'll do more. But I always do 10 stitches for this part of the cuff, and then in this case I'm going to do 5 more for a total of 15. Now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to slip stitch in the first 10 stitches. So we've slip stitched our 10. Now we're going to do the same pattern as we've done on the rest of the sweater. So I'm going to double crochet in my last 5 stitches. Chain 1 and turn. Now I'm going to back loop, single crochet for 5 stitches. And then slip stitch the remaining 10, also doing a back loop. That's again going to give us that ribbed effect that makes it look almost like a knit sweater. Then you're just going to repeat that until you have the same amount of rows as you did for the rest of your sleeve. Okay, so once you've got your cuff all made, which I was not planning on doing this one like two-toned, but I ran out of this teal colored yarn, and I cannot tell you how many times I had to rip out and restart a new stripe for this sweater. I am really excited that I'm finishing this using scrap yarn, but like, I think this green color and the purple I was not originally planning on using, but I just had to add them in because I kept running out of yarn. So this can look a little weird, like how the heck am I gonna attach these two? But we're gonna do the exact same thing where we're just trying to match up the seams, and we're just gonna go one at a time, like one little ribbing section at a time, and single crochet, sorry, not single crochet, and slip stitch all the way down. Okay, now that we've got all the pieces of our sweater stitched together, we can put the whole thing together. You want to make sure you leave some space for the neck. We're going to add this later. I did like 9 sets of these, like 9 of the double crochet rows is how much I left. The way we're going to do this neck, it does have a little bit of stretch, but not a ton. So just, I would recommend doing the shoulder part separately and making sure that you can kind of like throw it over your head and test it out and make sure it's going to fit, and then you can kind of adjust if you need to go tighter or looser to make a bigger or smaller hole. You just want to make sure you've got shoulders, sides, down the sleeve and then attach the sleeve, and then we'll come back to show you how to do the neck and to add sort of like a strip at the bottom if you want to do that. Okay, now that we've got everything all stitched up, the last thing we have to do is put the neck on, and if you want to do a strip along the bottom. So I'm going to chain 5. Chain an extra 1. Then I'm going to single crochet back through all of these just like normal. Then what I'm going to do is slip stitch to join that row I just did to the rest of the sweater. Then we're going to slip stitch again into the next chain. And then turn and do my single crochets again. So it's helpful for me to count when I do these just to make sure I'm doing everything right. It can get a little tricky too, having to like, sometimes I kind of turn the sweater this way, so just so that it like makes more sense. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain 1, turn, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then once again I'm slip stitching into the chain directly below it to attach it to the sweater, slip stitching in the next one, and then turning. So I'm just going to do that all the way around until I've completed the neck. Okay, now that I have reached the end, all I'm gonna do is slip stitch these together. Now all I have to do is tie up all these little extra ends and then we're done. So here's the final product. I'm actually really excited about how this turned out. I was kind of unsure with using all the scrap yarn if I was gonna like the final product, but I really do. I think it's pretty cool. I really like how this like thin stripe on this sleeve kind of gives these two thicker ones, it like makes them poof out a little bit. I think you could play around with that and make like a cool kind of like Renaissance-y looking type of sweater where like these sections were more puffed up. I like the color blocking and the kind of changing colors and that sort of a thing. I really hope you guys liked this video. If you make this sweater, feel free to like tag me on Instagram and show me. I'd love to see kind of other people's ideas for how to work with this. I really like that there's so many options. If you like this one and you want to see more from me, feel free to subscribe. I've got another crochet video coming out next month, but you can feel free obviously to check out my other kind of content as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.